Hi everyone, thanks for joining us for the third tech community call. Today we're going to discuss mostly about BNB Greenfield and the latest news and exploring as well the initial test phase. So I think it's been almost 2 weeks now that we've been live with the testnet. So we have a few projects here as well which have started building on top of it, some validator, some storage provider. So looking forward to have some initial feedback from all of you guys. So let's look into maybe the guests. So want to welcome all of you. So maybe you can each of you introduce a bit about yourself and what you'll be doing with Greenfield or outside as well. So we can start with Starboard.
Hey, this is Starboard. My name is Sylvan. We mostly work on analytics and data infrastructures for Web3 data.
Okay, we can move to Bware. Abner from Polyhedra, I think we can hear your mic sometimes, so if you can mute yourself when you are not talking.
Hey guys, I'm Flavian. I'm the CEO of Bware Labs, and at Bware Labs we are mostly building infrastructure, and infrastructure has multiple segments, let's say. So we do validator services. We also run storage providers, and at the same time we're building tooling for blockchain ecosystems, which means APIs for developers, other toolings like snapshot services and faucets for testnet tokens. So that would be our implication in BNB Greenfield.
Okay, cool. Thanks. Then we have Polyhedra as well, which have been already working on BNB Chain. So nice to see you here as well.
Nice to see you. So I'm Abner, the co-founder and CEO of Polyhedra Network. So currently, Polyhedra is working on the infrastructure for Web3 interoperability by using advanced zero-knowledge proof protocols. So we design and implement ZK Bridge, which is a fully trustless and efficient cross-chain interoperability solution by using zero-knowledge proofs. So currently, we are very happy to work together with BNB Greenfield to working on the cross-chain data availability layer based on BNB Greenfield. And we already launched the product for Greenfield ZK Messenger by using Greenfield and ZK Bridge last week. And now you can have a try on our product. So it's a cross-chain data availability layer that allow everybody to send cross-chain messages, and your message is secured by BNB Greenfield. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to see maybe after we can go into the demo and you can explain us a bit more technically what you've been building with this ZK Messenger app. I've been trying it out. It's quite interesting as well. Maybe we can move to the next one, Filswan. Unless they are not here yet. I think we are missing a few, so they're going to join us a bit later on. So maybe we can start going ahead with the next slide, and once they're joining, they can then introduce themselves. Maybe Swayam, you want to give us a short introduction on Greenfield quickly, and then we can move on as well, just for people who joined for the first time. Maybe they haven't heard a bit about it.
Sure. So just for the quick context, so Greenfield is a decentralized storage network. It's quite similar to Filecoin or Aave or any of the other existing decentralized storage networks, but the model is quite different. So this data structure is quite similar to Amazon AWS S3, which actually makes it quite easy and more available and less learning curve for developers to tap into the storage. And we provide different capabilities, especially the core additional functionality compared to the rest of the networks is like access control. And I think it enables a lot of applications, especially when we think about how we can trigger this with the smart contracts. So that's a quick context on the Greenfield.
All right, it's quite interesting. I will just go past some past and current development as well, to see what the tech team has been doing in the past 2 weeks. So we released as well a new Go SDK and a new Greenfield, let's say CLI as well, command to provide more user-friendly tool and more tools as well for our users. So I think that's probably something that Polyhedra has been using as well in the backend with the ZK Messenger that they've been doing, enhancing as well the cross-chain between BSC and Greenfield. So I mentioned like one of the key feature of Greenfield is really this native integration with BSC as well, and the cross-chain communication between BSC and Greenfield, which is something that we are going to leverage in the future. And as well, the Challenger service that is ready as well. So the Challenger service is really something that's interesting for the proof of challenge. So knowing that the proof of challenge is something that validator need to do in order to challenge storage providers, something we're going to discuss more lately in detail later on. For the upcoming roadmap as well, or plan, let's say, for the next weeks, is really upgrading as well Greenfield underlying dependency to make sure that we have the latest Cosmos SDK, as well as the latest like Tendermint version as well. So this is something that our team is currently working on too. And as well working on garbage collector to ensure that we can easily remove files without having like a high load of garbage which is stored. As well as starting to work on the data marketplace development in order to really revolutionize how data can be exchanged and utilized, especially using payment solutions. Maybe Sven, you want to take this one?
Yeah, sure. So we just launched 2 weeks back, and we have seen a really good traction on Greenfield testnet. A lot of projects are already trying Polyhedra, and few of them are the core new applications that we have seen using it. We see the rise in the storage as well on the object storage. So it's a good, I think we are still in the very early phase of the network, and we expect to just see the exponential rise of how this would be used. So we are still we just onboarded few validators and onboarding SPs. I think it would just rise from this point.
All right. Yeah, I think if I'm correct, to Bware Labs now you are a validator as well on Greenfield, correct? How is the integration been doing?
On the tech side, I think it was pretty straightforward. I mean, our engineers were quite familiar with Tendermint architecture and what is required to run a validator from that perspective. I think the only hurdle that we've experienced is after we were sending the proposal, to become an active validator. There should have been coordination on the other validators to accept us. So I think that's one pain point that might be improved, or something that could be orchestrated in the future, just as a feedback. Other than that, it was pretty straightforward.
Right. I think we are missing probably as we have, let's say, an explorer for validator to be able to see who is a validator, who is active, who is in a waiting room, to be able to browse easily proposal as well. So I think that's what's happening right now, is like when someone new is joining, we might not be able to, the other validator might not be able to see it automatically. So I think such kind of web interface would be interesting to the community to build in order to pick up new proposal, really show it, let validator as well, validate those
totally
new
agree.
proposals.
Totally agree. And there is also some tools, like you can build a bot that automatically, sends in a channel what new proposals are being made. So that's also another interesting feature that might help, for the onboarding process, just as a feedback.
All right, interesting.
Yeah. So
maybe a few words on that. Yeah.
Yeah, I can just take this one. So Greenfield core itself is divided into 2 layers. So first, the bottom layer is our Greenfield blockchain, where most of our data, storage metadata is held, and you can have a proof of challenge here. It's made with the Cosmos SDK. On top of that, we have storage provider layer. Like any of the SPs operating would be on top of the metadata layer, which is the storage provider, and this infra is basically that enables the P2P network for the file exchange and provides a redundancy for the users.
Right, correct. So here we just have Greenfield in action. So I'm just going to go through quickly before we move to the next one, just to refresh as well some people's mind, but something you can already find in a white paper as well, or in the resources. So we can really see that Greenfield is able to communicate with BSC. We have storage provider, where you can select multiple storage provider based on your feedback or the pricing that each storage provider is doing as well. We can see as well different mechanisms, such as the challenge for validator, where validator can challenge storage provider in order to ensure that the file is accessible at any given time. And as well as DApp, who can interact directly through Greenfield or through the app. So I'm really looking maybe to interest like later on, like with Polyhedra, maybe which route you've been using in order to connect to Greenfield for your users. So that's something you can maybe explain us a bit later. Just a few keywords on storage provider, because I think we have one or two potential storage provider here today as well with Livepeer and Chaindeck, which maybe you can introduce yourself as well, now that you have been joining us. So like, as you know, storage provider really like need to store data, respond to download with different solutions such as primary storage provider or secondary, where a user can select what is his primary, and then data automatically saved on secondary storage provider as well to ensure the data availability and the redundancy on the data. So it's something that is really primary goal for Greenfield to ensure that we have a good replication mechanism. So here we have as well the architecture with different modular service. So it's something that is, I would like to have maybe feedback from different storage provider that are maybe Livepeer or Chaindeck. I know you are already doing storage provider for other decentralized networks. So I was wondering if you could give us some, let's say, experience with other network and how you see it in Greenfield.
Yeah, I mean, we've been trying to get onboarded, but we've been hit with the same problem as Flavian, wherein we've been trying to propose the storage provider part, and we have not gotten the proposal accepted. Like it's been like 5-6 times since we have proposed that. So,
Right.
I mean, it would really help if we can get the validators on the same page, especially, I mean, for the testnet. It really does make sense if we can just open up a quick public issue on forum and probably just ask all the validators to keep a look at it maybe once a week or once a day, something on those lines, and then maybe we can provide more feedback.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But based on another storage provider, do you want to give any other feedback based on the, let's say, the surveys that you've been seeing and how it is designed compared to other, let's say, network?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's too early to say where we land up according to that, but Greenfield does have a relative simplicity associated with it in terms of how simple it is in general from a technical architecture standpoint and from a standpoint of how the user would interact with it, considering that it can take up to 18 hours or more to unseal objects in other blockchains and other storage block related blockchains. I think Greenfield is well on its way to become like a more generalized solution there. But time will tell where we specialize. But I'm especially interested in the data marketplace aspect and how it's going to develop. That is one of the things that Chaindeck can contribute back to, and we already intend to, as we've already talked about. And the other part is the tiered storage, wherein this is something that is sorely missing, and it's something that's been a long time coming to a lot of storage provider networks, wherein we would want objects to be stored in sort of these separate tiers. So you can have these decentralized networks which are layered together with edge networks as well over there. And as we see, people are bringing in more edge caches, edge serverless, and all these kind of technologies. I feel that would be the next goal for networks like Greenfield to go towards, create high speed cache networks, so that it's not just an archival network, so to speak, but Greenfield also comes into nominal use, wherein people can come in and use Greenfield like they would use something which is more centralized, like AWS S3 or something like that. Yeah.
Right. It's quite diverse in the usage, so it's really giving people like multiple choice on how they want to use it.
Exactly, and it also actually decreases the time it takes to them, because AWS S3 and all these other centralized ones, they have a leg up here, so to speak, because they're like most people who are going to access S3 are going to access it from an internal infrastructure standpoint, and they are going to go through private networks. While for decentralized storage, it's almost always everybody is going through public networks. That creates this extra latency, even if the underlying storage is fast enough. So that is something that can be taken care of by a tiered storage architecture, and we can probably help, and we want to help Greenfield implement that in the near future. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I don't know if Filswan had like a feedback as well to give, like based on the architectural design and what you've been seeing in like other network as well.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Charlie from Filswan. Sorry, I've been late a few minutes.
No worries.
So, yeah. Thanks. So actually, we are providing the multi-chain layer of the decentralized storage part. So actually, what we are doing is the data availability layer. So we are trying to store those data on the IPFS and also backup them on the Filecoin as a solution. So what we can provide, I think, on this structure is trying to provide some decentralized sort of provide nodes for this Greenfield architecture. So and we also can provide all those data availability part. So if the users want to retrieve the data, we can do the data retrieving and rebuilding. So if any disaster recovery needs is there, we actually have the technology to retrieve to rebuild all the data from one node. That's actually what we do. So yeah.
And how do you both feel about the challenge, the proof of challenge regarding the data incentivization for a storage provider to ensure that the data is stored and is always accessible compared to other mechanisms? Especially, I think this is one key aspect of Greenfield as well, where storage provider need to stake, let's say, certain BNB to be able to be eligible as a storage provider. Does they have incentivized stake or financially stake BNB in order to make sure that they are behaving correctly? So how do you see this playing around Greenfield maybe versus others?
Yeah, so actually, the staking part, and I think it's a good thing, but it's more on the tokenomics part. So the staking, if you're asking too much staking coins there, it might give too much pressure. But actually, staking is a good way, to help get the service quality get better.
We do have one question here. Is there slashing involved on the staking part in case of data unavailability, or is it just not receiving rewards anymore, or this kind of mechanism? How did you guys thought about architecture in that regard?
So definitely as a validator, since one of the job of the validator is to really check the challenge, challenging the storage provider to ensure that the file is accessible. If the storage provider, of course, is not able to show proof of the accessibility of the storage, then the storage provider would be slashed. And then, of course, those slashed BNB would get distributed to the validator and his delegator. So definitely there is a reward based for validator, but not only for validator. So as you might have seen in the roadmap and in the white paper, everyone can be a challenger in a way. So everyone is going to be able to challenge storage providers. So as an individual, I can as well challenge a storage provider. Of course, the challenging is going to cost a bit of money to ensure that there is no spamming, let's say. But potentially, I could get the reward as well if I'm able to find out that the storage provider is not doing a good job in the accessibility of the file.
Similar to L2s, as I'm understanding.
Right.
So it's a twofold solution in terms of the storage provider is challenged for the data availability, but so if the data is not available, then it does get a certain amount of grace time to sort of to fix it. So from that perspective, if you're asking, so it's a little bit different from the, I guess, the validator model, where if you're not available, then you're just slashed and that's it. Here, it's a little bit more complex because both files are involved. File can be server can be disconnected, file connection abrupted, so this kind of stuff. So it's a little bit more complex and multifold. So even if everything is all right, downloads can still fail for a variety of reasons. So this is why it's you do have this grace period as well.
Are you thinking of automatic mechanism of ensuring, from a validator standpoint, that a storage provider is available, or does it imply that each validator should build their own mechanism of ensuring that the storage provider is always available. Because you mentioned that other users can also bid if a storage provider is not available to challenge him.
Right, that's going to be by default in the validator job, let's say. But then there's a module that can be used by the community as well. It's maybe I can. So if the documentation as well is showing it, so maybe I can link the documentation here, and then we can link it in the notes later on. But basically, the service challenge is something that is, let's say, by default in the validator job, but it's something that can be run independently by any party.
I think like as a call to action, there is a use case here where sort of like for community to build a status health page, both on the network and on the validators and on the storage providers. So there is here a little bit like more work in terms of, I guess, user experience and overall UI for people to be able like to get this data, because it does exist on the blockchain in terms of if the challenge was accepted, not accepted, this kind of stuff, but it's not very easily sort of like presented anywhere. So it is definitely something to work on.
Right,
also, I have a quick question regarding this. Other networks, they incentivize storage providers depending on the kind of total capacity that they provide, and they also have alternative ways to get into being storage provider. This is especially true for smaller firms. For bigger firms who are already into it, they can afford it, but a lot of times that defeats the purpose of decentralization. If only enterprise firms are coming there, certain enterprise firms are coming there, you'd be better off just going to AWS S3 and Azure and trying to do stuff over there, right? So are there any plans regarding that for Greenfield?
I don't imagine from the economy perspective there will be any incentivization like on the usual basis on the capacity, because this is totally different economics, and Greenfield is based like more on the sustainable economy. So if the data is being provided and served, then this is what you get paid for. So I guess like some kind of initial programs can be done in terms of support, and but this should be like, I guess like it's better to be brought up to the forum. There has been already some threads around it, so this is being circulated. One thing to remind is that a BNB ecosystem as a whole does have a lot of data, so like ZK-BNB and the L1 and the archives, so this can also like be directed to the BNB Greenfield already like as a demand for the service. And to answer the second question is that I guess like from the again like from the overall perspective, it's not only, so there are two types of storage providers, the primary and the secondary. The primary is the one who needs to serve the users, thus it requires much more resources to be able like to cope with this demand. The secondary are the ones who primarily use for replication, and these can be easily fulfilled by retail or anyone other users. And this is like so sort of like the distinction between two, that the primary storage provider is more of a so established cloud providers or even like small companies, but like it's a business, it's not something that you would do at home. And the secondary storage provider, it's just for everyone, for the community to participate.
Yeah, actually, a quick question here for Livepeer. Like, where does Livepeer see the need, and how exactly Livepeer sees to leverage Greenfield in the or just the storage network for the video infrastructure that you already built?
Yeah. Thanks for having me. I'm Eric from Livepeer. Sorry, I ran a little late. I was waiting in the wrong waiting room. But yeah. So to answer this question, how would Livepeer potentially leverage Greenfield. I think it really comes down to like the value proposition that we're trying to create for the users. So just to introduce the project a little bit, we're building a video streaming infrastructure for decentralized applications, for Web3 applications, right? And for many of these Web3 applications, the primary value proposition for their user is about ownership of their content. And of course, it's about who owns the content, who gets to view it, who gets to benefit from the if the content actually makes money, right? So all of these different aspects, but it all comes down to who owns the data at the end of the day. And so it's very important for these applications to be able to prove to their users that like you as the user actually own the data, and the data is stored in decentralized storage. There's credible neutrality in the in the data infrastructure that they're using, right? So Livepeer, the Livepeer network is all about video processing and video streaming. It doesn't do storage of the data, so we kind of plug into other decentralized storages for this to kind of provide that credible neutrality. So that's the most important thing for us. To be able to prove ownership.
So if I understand this correct, like ownership, data ownership is one of the things that is still missing on the Livepeer network. And like, do you have the data markets on Livepeer, or it would be really useful for the video being generated or being processed on Livepeer to use the access control and the data markets on from Greenfield?
Yeah, the ownership, the data ownership itself actually gets provided by the underlining storage infrastructure that we plug in already. So Livepeer today works, plugs into IPFS and Arweave, and also storage. Those are the three. So people kind of leverage those three networks for that kind of stuff. For that. Sorry, can you repeat your second question?
Yeah, I was just asking if data markets is something important for Livepeer, and would you be able to leverage the existing data ownership on top to build this?
Yeah, I think I personally think of the data marketplace as something that we leverage rather than that we participate in, at least from day one, right? So yeah, so in that way, I think of Livepeer as maybe the consumer on the demand generation on the marketplace rather than the supplier of storage. But yeah, like if there is a way to participate as a user, as someone who just needs storage, then yeah, that's how we would participate.
Yeah,
we've been talking a lot about user and cost as well, like reward for storage provider or reward for validator. So maybe we can introduce like kind of an overview of the billing process, like how is the billing being done within Greenfield from a, let's say, more flow perspective. Maybe Victor, you want to introduce it to us?
Yeah, absolutely. So the BNB Greenfield billing is very similar to the traditional cloud for the storage billing. So you pay both, like the users pay both for the storage and for the traffic, so to speak, for downloading the data. And so far so good from this perspective. And this essentially allows to create the sustainable economy, as it doesn't deliberately create this kind of situations similar to other decentralized storage where you only pay for the storage and sort of like traffic it's supposed to be provided by default but non-incentivized, and hence it's a suboptimal service for the users. This is why a variety of scalability solution popped up both like on the IPFS and Arweave. So this should be able to cope with these issues and provide like more sustainable and steady flow both for the users and for the users in terms of service and for the storage provider in terms of revenue and incentivization. In terms of overall fees, as this is a programmable storage, then we also have naturally transactions. So the storage fee we covered in before, as this is like for the object and for the traffic, but we also have for the programmability part. So essentially for the relayer, for the blockchain itself, and this is where the Greenfield validators get the reward from this transaction gas. So this is in a way similar to regular blockchain, where users pay for the gas to execute some transactions, and then the gas for these transactions is being accumulated and distributed to the validator who built the block. An interesting and quite like it's like an interesting approach in terms of how it is all done is in terms of billing itself, as it's based on flows. So the billing is done per second. Essentially, when user uploads the file, then every second it's the account is being deducted, or every block, depends on how it is will be done in production and mainnet. But the billing is done on the per second basis, and essentially what it means that user knows exactly all the time how much money they need and how much money they are left, and everything can be calculated. And because it is flows, then users can both receive money and pay for the storage. And in terms of receiving money, this is where an interesting use cases come, as because projects can now essentially program the metadata and allow access to files, something like pay-per-view, if you're talking about advertisement or video or songs or some kind of entertainment. Then these royalties, if you will, can be channeled to the user, to the owner of the file, and then the user will have eventually like the channel that the inflow that receives funds to the wallet, and the channel that of the outflow that is being used for paying for the files. And so this is like the gist of how it will work. So when we're talking about Greenfield billing, we always need to think about sort of like a bucket where it has holes and it also flows water, but you can also through different value proposition and use cases pour more water on top of it, and this creates like a fluid economy.
In what currency is it paid?
So the whole thing is being built in USD, but charged in BNB. So when the user comes, for instance, it has so the denomination is in USD. So the user knows that they will be, for instance, paying, I don't know, $1 for terabyte, whatever, or for gigabyte. And when the actual payment is due, then this is being deducted in the BNB from their wallet.
Got it. And one following question. For example, they are deducting a fixed number of BNB based on the market value of BNB, right? If BNB has a higher price, is the same billing being done, the same amount of BNB, or
No,
does it has an Oracle?
This is based on Oracle. So this is sort of like currently, I believe it is on the market price. I believe there will be like some kind of changes to this in terms of maybe some kind of averaging, but this is something like to the future.
I think this kind of billing process, I think, is quite interesting, especially for storage provider who can we show what is the underlying cost for a specific user in terms of USD value, because this is really typical of, let's say, Web2 current storage providers. So I think it's really an interesting approach to attract Web2, let's say, builders into Greenfield as well. So regarding storage provider, maybe Chaindeck, or like, what's your point of view regarding like such kind of storage billing versus what's done maybe outside of Greenfield, where like usually it's used maybe a token which is not necessarily stable, which is fluctuating quite a lot?
Like in terms of call for action, I think the obvious few use cases will be some kind of recurrent payment in USD and involving some kind of hedging integration with some kind of DeFi protocol. So essentially, you know in advance how much you will be paid in USD, but then you will also know how much you will pay in BNB, and you will pay some kind of premium on the hedging. So there are there are several interesting use cases that can be already implemented to provide this kind of like advanced billing services, and coupling together, if you will, like DeFi and Greenfield in terms of both like recurrent payment, pay as you go, some kind of monthly. So there's definitely a billing use cases and potential for potential projects here.
And sorry, I just have a question. Is the idea that there will be kind of like gateway service providers that will do that kind of like financial engineering for under the hood, so that for an end user or for a business that's trying to use Greenfield, they're really using it through those gateway services?
They can, like if they want sort of like more familiar use cases, but if the users are sort of like comfortable with paying in BNB, but or paying in USD but build in BNB, from their perspective, if they already like Web3 users, so from their perspective, I don't imagine this would be a use case. But for Web2 users, this is something definitely like to take a look. The important aspect here is that BNB token itself is not very volatile. At the several projects already have been included over the past year. So we have Ziki BNB, Ziki protocol. We have now Greenfield storage. We also have collaboration with the Cocos engine on the optimistic BNB rollup. So all these projects eventually using BNB as a token, and the exposure or like the underlying usage of BNB token as a utility is quite vast. And so it's not like something like a project-based utility token which goes sideways 30% up and down on an hour basis. Like on the general, like if we're talking about like day to day or even like weeks, months to months, it's more or less stable. So that it's not that of an issue, but still, like for the users who want like security, I guess, or are not very comfortable initially with the Web3 and want this sort of like a hand holding, this is definitely something like the use cases for the DeFi.
If I may share some experience over crypto payments and this kind of because we do have crypto payment on one of our services on Blast, where people pay subscriptions. One thing that we've noticed is that there are actually enterprises that are regulated in diverse parts of the world, which for their accounting can't really deal with crypto payments. So they often need like credit card payment or bank transfer and invoices that needs to be provided for their company. And I'm guessing that might be a hurdle for them to use BNB Greenfield, given the current architecture. So maybe gateways built on top of it might
not
be
as initial
solution.
users, but like probably as a sort of like phase 2 when we have more payment and like DeFi specific projects who enable such use cases.
Correct. Maybe we can move to a few use cases that have already been like working live on Greenfield. So one is dseller. So maybe I'll just try to share my screen. Maybe you can just have a small demo of like how it's working. So here you should be able to see my screen as well. So here I'm logged into dseller.io. This is basically kind of a Dropbox on Greenfield as well, which is on testnet, where you can easily create new buckets and as well select the specific primary storage provider. So which provider is going to store your file versus others. So you can easily create buckets. And as you can see, the gas fee is automatically selected as well. And now I'm going to do something that is quite interesting, and I'm going to upload basically a file, but this file is going to be HTML. So basically Greenfield is going to give me the possibility to view the file as well directly on the browser. So hopefully it's going to be stable for the demo, but as we know, usually when there is time for demos, there's always something that is not working. So here I can click as well on the link to be able to see like that a new object has been uploaded. So of course, like right now, everything is public. So by default, Greenfield is not doing any encryption. So this is something that potentially like a DApp or a provider would need to provide to the users, because by default, all the metadata that are stored are, of course, showing some public information. So now that my file is uploaded, I can as well view the detail and basically have different like possibilities, such kind of sharing the link. So here, instead of downloading the file, I'm going to view it, for example. So as we can see, by viewing it, we can see that it's basically rendering the HTML file. So it's something that is quite interesting as use cases, especially for example, for Livepeer, to be able to browse videos or easily and change access to video. I think it's something that you might want to use quite fast, I believe. I don't know if you already started implementing the SDK as well and looked into our documentation, or what's your view on like such a easy way to like view file or browse file as well using storage provider data on Greenfield, knowing that it's tried almost, let's say, like Amazon S2 standard or S3, sorry.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. So, you know, a lot of this stuff with video streaming comes down to like the trade-off between performance and cost, right? So,
right.
You know, when we think about it, we always do pretty thorough like performance testing before we switch in a solution like this, because you know it's easy to stream video to one user. It's much harder to stream it to tens of thousands or millions of users around the world, right? And so, well, we have a mixed architecture there for the streaming part. It basically, you know, it can try to like we try to optimize for you know, between these two parameters of, you know, cost and performance, right? So depending on how hot a file is, you know, it will either send it directly to the source of the storage, or we'll cache it in a CDN, or we use kind of different ways to serve that piece of content. And then of course that also, you know, and then we have kind of analytics that sits on top, that so it can give us insights into how, you know, how those delivery mechanisms are performing.
I think like an interesting add-on to your presentation, Arno, would be to say that there is a universal link or universal format for the links. So essentially, when we're talking about like the index HTML, you could put pictures inside and scripts and like actually doing like the whole website, like the React and whatnot and Angular, and essentially again like call to action to create some kind of Webpack script that would just upload all the files and or deduce the envisioned URL and then just exchange all the links throughout the HTML and then upload it, and everything would just work like the whole full website, because they don't change, the links, they don't change. So you as well may upload the JavaScripts and the images and everything.
Yeah, correct. It's a pretty good use case as well. And then maybe Polyhedra, you can discuss a bit about like the Greenfield ZK messenger that you've been building in the past few weeks as well, which is already live, I think, on your website as well. So maybe you can
Great.
explain us a bit like how you manage the architecture as well, and which kind of tooling you've been using to connect your back to like Greenfield directly using your backend or front end.
Sure. Let me give you a brief introduction. See.
Do you want to share your screen or?
Yes, I can share my screen.
In the meantime, I had a quick question
It's a file, yeah.
regarding the storage part. Does Greenfield allow to transfer or basically do the first transfer into the network on an off-chain level? Basically, sometimes a lot of these, data providers will need to transfer a lot of data from directly. Maybe something like drives being transported or stuff like that to save up on a lot of bandwidth costs. Is that something in the
And how would you envision of doing this differently, not as it is? How is it different?
So basically,
so imagine I would have to have like some kind of like terabyte of archive, as you mentioned, backup. So what's your opinion on this?
so how it works with other storage providers in other networks is basically, first of all, it's for petabyte scale, not for the terabyte scale that it is
Okay.
generally in. So the drives are generally shipped to the storage provider in some way, or at least to any servers which are part of their private network, and then they get onboarded, while the storage provider themselves are able to update the basically database or the metadata database with the same updates there internally when the file has received. So basically the first step happens completely off chain, but it does save up a lot on the public bandwidth and a lot on time, because sometimes it's just
And
not possible to have that
when
much bandwidth.
when you say ship like physically, like Amazon one day shipping, like this kind of shipping.
Yeah, you have drive shipped in like truckloads. There are a lot of gateways in other networks which are just doing this.
Okay, call to action.
All right, cool.
Call to action, exactly. It's pretty good use case. I know that the team is working on batch upload as well. So I think that's something we need to look into it as well, like how exactly it's going to be done, like from a service point of view, but it's definitely like a good point to raise.
I think it will be an interesting use case for a storage provider to provide an added value. So naturally, not all storage providers will be able to cope with it or want to. So this is something that is interesting for, as this is decentralized network, and which is essentially invites different type of storage provider. This is something that can be done. And so, for instance, you would have as a storage provider, allow this service, and then you would target these users and provide like this shipping service as a package together, whatever, and in a way like create an added value on the market. So it doesn't have to be on the broad level. There is no requirement in terms of TNCs, like cross framework for all the storage provider. So essentially everyone can do, like, invent new use cases for their own target.
The thing is that I wanted to understand if it is possible for a storage provider to onboard a file onto the network when it's first uploaded directly instead. So there's no transaction that's taking place.
Okay.
That's the part.
Because it's not signed by the user. Okay.
Yeah, but I think Abhishek, what you're mentioning is more about optimizing of the storage on the SP end, right? Like as an SP, you're optimizing your storage and moving it around to, let's say, save the cost.
No. So it's not just that. A lot of times when enterprises get onboarded to such decentralized networks, they have petabytes of data to ship, and so they literally opt for shipping in the data. That's what they do. And in such cases, the logistics are fine. Storage providers can take care of it. That is agreed upon. But the problem that we face is basically how, from a technical standpoint, will that storage provider be able to upload that file and then update the metadata in a provable way? So we
Yeah,
can still update the databases, right? They're still with us. We can actually manually update it, but that won't be provable on the blockchain, right?
Yeah, it has to be some kind of multi-sig solution or an MPC where like both the storage provider and later on the user sort of like retrospectively assigns everything.
Yeah, I think we can take this offline, right?
Yeah,
we can
absolutely. This is very interesting use
for
case.
this, and
We'll
obviously we
take it
can
up to the
do
forum.
this in more depth and try to figure out a solution here.
Yeah, sure.
Good question. Thanks for it. For the Hydra, you can go back
Yes.
to your presentation about
Yes,
ZK
let's go
Messenger.
ahead. Sure, thank you so much. So we are building an application to use Greenfield as the data availability layer. Yeah, so here's the demo video. So work together with ZK Bridge and BNB Greenfield. So ZK Bridge is help Greenfield to be the cross-chain data availability layer and allow any blockchain to read the block header, and also each transactions happen on Greenfield. Yeah, so ZK Bridge can work together with the BSC native bridge with Greenfield, and also can bridge to make the cross-chain bridge between BNB Greenfield and other blockchain, and allowing any of the layer 1 and layer 2 blockchain networks to read the transactions and also the blocks of the Greenfield in a fully trustless and efficient way by using zero-knowledge proofs. So in this way, that Greenfield can be the general and universal data availability layer. So here's the demo product. So you can see you can use our ZK Bridge / ZK Messenger. So first, user can select BNB Greenfield as the data storage layer to store the message and send it cross-chain. So, and the user can also directly send the message across different blockchain networks. So here, by default are using BNB Greenfield, and then you can choose the sender chain, the receiver chain, and also the receiving address, and editing the message body. And for the message body, it can be as long as possible. And also in the future, you can also append any attachment in the message, like an email. So you can attach the attachment, and also you can also attach an NFT. And all the data, all the files, and also the NFT metadata is stored on BNB Greenfield. And the users can choose to send to address and or to send to an ENS address, or ENS or a space ID. So it's just work like a traditional Web2 email. However, it is built on multi-chain by using ZK Bridge for cross-chain email, and it can work together with BNB Greenfield for the data availability and storage. Yeah, so you can add a message and send it through BNB Greenfield just like an email. Yeah. That's the current product. Thank you so much.
How have you been doing the connection for the users? Basically, it's the backend which is connected to Greenfield directly, correct?
Yes. So currently in this version, we are helping user to store the message in the backend of Greenfield. So we are doing the storage provide the storage services for the user. So in the following version with the access control, so user can choose to store it in the Greenfield, and we will encapsulate the services for the users.
Okay, interesting.
It will be also
Anyone has any question?
It will be also interesting use case for the notification in terms of billing, like to provide some kind of a Chrome extension or whatever, and people will be able to receive notifications about like payment being billed or not enough money, like this kind of stuff.
Sure. Thank you so much.
Maybe based on time, Victor, we had an interesting proposal this week as well that had been pushed to the forum around Greenfield. Maybe we can just review it quickly, and if you want to discuss about it.
I guess like the gist of it is just at the current version, so the programmability only works around metadata, so essentially around the access to the data, but not about the data itself. So the distributed processing proposal actually changes it and creates sort of like even more extends Greenfield in terms of being able to process the data while by the storage providers. I guess like it will be also interesting from the ETL perspective, machine learning, AI, but also maybe like from the video perspective, like encoding, decoding, this kind of stuff. So this also can be done now on the in the decentralized way, not on chain, but decentralized processing. So take a look at the proposal. It has been just like published like a few days ago. It will be still a while, but I guess like it everyone is welcome to contribute and to ask questions.
Right, correct. So, I mean, can maybe have a few closing points as well for everyone. Like, if you want to say a bit like what's maybe your roadmap on Greenfield, what you plan to do in the coming weeks. Like, we've taken note as well on some like key action that need to be taken, especially on the time between like submission of proposal and acceptance of proposal by validator. So I think that's something we'll need to enhance as well with the team to ensure that everyone is able to get accepted quite in a fast manner as well. So maybe you can each of you go through and give us maybe a few ending points of like what's your roadmap on Greenfield as well. Maybe Starboard, you can go first, and then we can go in the same order as the icons are shown.
Cool. I mean, for us, we because we focus more on the data analytics side. So for us, it's really to figure out what is the implicit service level agreement model that's being implemented on the network, and then how do you ensure and establish a set of state on the network, and how do you provide like several guidelines and several like a reputation metrics for people to keep improving their services. So those are the some of the key points that we are trying to identify and scope them.
Okay, cool. Bware Labs, you want to go next?
On our part, we would explore some API on our Blast API service, so to access Greenfield blockchain and to expose it to developers. So that's something that we are exploring in the next couple of months, and also some other tooling related to BNB Greenfield, like a snapshot service or also testnet faucet that we could help the ecosystem with.
Thanks. Polyhedra, you want to go next? Maybe what's the roadmap for ZK Messenger? Like, is it going to stop here, or do you have any plan in your head?
Yeah, so currently we are working on ZK Messenger to add more features and allow users to store their data on Greenfield by themselves. And more, we are integrating ZK Bridge with BNB Greenfield that allow any other blockchain system, layer 1 and layer 2 system, to directly read the block header and also read the transactions happened on BNB Greenfield. So we are doing the integration, and also we are working on a privacy mode for Greenfield, and we've already send a proposal to the BNB forum, BNB Chain forum, which is the privacy preserving based mode for BNB Greenfield by using Ghoster as the encrypted access control list that currently so Greenfield are using groups to manage the access control, that each group may have different permissions for such as read and write. And in the future, so currently the addresses on the access control list are using the plain text of the user's addresses. So we want to improve this system that is use a privacy preserving for the identities that for the public they cannot see the group members for better security.
Okay, cool, interesting. Looking forward for all of those. Filswan, you want to have a key ending point as well?
Yeah, actually, like in next few weeks, I think we will be working on like some integration with the APIs of Greenfield, because like we think we you know the IPFS connection, and also we the IPFS connection from our side, actually we have done a lot of like APIs on it, so we will try to get it connected, and also we'll test the egress and upgrade the bandwidth, the speed of the upload files, all those things. I think it's a critical like issue for the potential users in the future, like for the potential like Greenfield users, if they want to upload, download like data, they will be very care about like the speed. And other than that, we are also working on a computing project. So we will try to check if like this two can become combined, like do some computing based on the storage from Greenfield. So this will be some very interesting part we're going to develop in next few weeks.
Okay, cool. Looking forward for it. Livepeer.
Yeah, I think in the next phase, we'll start to do some testing and understand the performance characteristics of Greenfield, both from a data archival perspective and also kind of data delivery / video streaming perspective. So from there, we'd be able to understand how exactly it can fit into kind of the Livepeer, overall Livepeer, kind of technology stack.
Cool, interesting. Chaindeck, and then.
So we have coming up with another product which is a data marketplace, and we've been going through with other storage providers. Up till now, we've been basically working with a lot of other chains as well on this. And one thing that we want to definitely visit with Greenfield is because of the simplicity in the design, and the sheer speed is much higher than the other networks, and we would want to use it to create an active store instead of a archival only store. And that is something that we want to first give priority to in the next phase, to figure out what kind of latencies we can get and what kind of speeds we can get, and if they are enough, we can even literally host a web2 database onto Greenfield directory. So that's something that we want to check out. Yeah,
cool, that would be great. So thanks everyone for coming. I don't know if Swayam or Victor want to say something as well to end, but otherwise we can end here.
I think there were a lot of interesting questions, and like probably over the next week will be a lot of chatter in the forum. So I invite all of you to follow and to add more to this. Also, with the Greenfield executable proposal, it's also like quite hefty. So there will be a lot of different use cases and thoughts there, and it will be interesting to get like your opinion, both like from your experience and like to get your thoughts around the roadmap.
Yeah, I think I highly encourage everyone to keep checking the community forum. And if you have any questions or any clarification that is required in the process, just post that. And I think we can take up the questions from there. And we also have the TG group. You can always reach out to us.
Right.
Sounds
so
great.
Feel free to really go to the forum. So if you have any question, like raise it in the BNB Chain forum, and we'll make sure that we are going to reply to it as well and engage discussion and conversation around it.
Absolutely. And for
Thanks,
all of
everyone.
you who are watching the YouTube, also like the channel, if for all the questions, feel free to go to the forum and ask there.
Thanks. Have a great weekend ahead, guys.
You too.
Thanks, everybody.
Everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
You guys.
Fine.